It has been 12 long years since we last saw a brand new Z-car get revealed, and the world has changed a lot since then. But so has the Z. And this is our best look yet at what's coming for the 7th generation of one of the world's oldest and most iconic sports car families. This is the Nissan Z Proto. While time moves forward, this new Z seeks to wind back the clock through its design. It's retro, full of callbacks to the best Zs that have come before it, but not in a cringy way. It's retro but very respectful of its history. Starting at the front, we can now clearly see a feature that has been teased for a long while now, those headlamps. Nissan has gone to great lengths to bring the Z's face back into line with that of the first Z, the 240Z of 1969. The shape emulates the sugar scoop style of those original cars' headlamp buckets, and if you look at the LED daytime running lights from dead on, their circular outline mimics the shape of the old Z's sealed beam lamps. However, I'm not so sure about the shape of that air dam. Viewed from the front, the corners are very square. It looks almost as if it's been carved out with a knife. Also, having so much of the bumper crash structure blocking off what otherwise looks like an air intake also doesn't gel too well with my eye. I don't think the front bumper is quite as elegant as the rest of the car, but what do you think? Have your say in the comments. I do like the 240Z-esque bonnet bulge with its arrow-shaped leading edge, however. Plus, measuring in slightly longer, wider, and lower than the 370Z, the new Z Proto's proportions have definitely moved in the right direction for a sports car. The silhouette should also be pretty familiar to anyone who's ever seen a 350Z or 370Z. The roofline slopes back from the top of the windshield at a shallow angle, and the classic coupe proportions of those modern Z cars is preserved. Vertical door handles have made a return, but this time they're a more smoothly integrated flap that's part of the door, rather than a handle that sits proud of it. There's also some other new stuff to look at. The rear end is a lot more vertical now, especially when viewed from the side, and the sheet metal is all new everywhere on the car. There's also a katana-like chrome strip running over the side glass that recalls the rain gutters of the old 240 and 260Z. Between you and I'm not really sold on that particular splash of chrome, but maybe I'll change my mind when I see it in the flesh. While one of the most distinctive features of the 370Z was its massive circular rear wheel arch flares, the Z Proto instead changes the contouring of its hips to emulate the squarer body lines of the 240Z. It's still got a fat rear end, but it's now broader and boxier than before. It's something that gives it a stronger identity compared to the 350Z and 370Z, even though it sits on the same platform as those two cars. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Those distinctive taillights finish off the exterior, and with their thick horizontal bars and rump-spanning blackout graphic, they're a clear nod to the Z32 300ZX that was introduced in 1989, became a massive hit in the USA, and was on sale throughout the 1990s. Behind the Z Proto's massive alloy wheels lurk some sizable 6-piston brake calipers. Given this is technically a pre-production prototype, don't necessarily assume that those stoppers will make it into the production car. However, they do look fairly similar to what's on the R35 GTR, which could make grafting them onto the new Z a much simpler task, perhaps for an eventual Nismo variant. Same too for the wheels. They look great on the Proto, but I wouldn't expect to see them on the base model version, whenever that shows up at dealerships. And that's normal. Prototypes like this typically serve to allow manufacturers to gauge public reaction to design and new technology without having to make a commitment to full production. However, the Z Proto that we see here is so remarkably well finished that it looks like it could conceivably roll into a showroom tomorrow with very few changes. And the interior really cements that idea. Inside we can see Nissan's latest cabin design language, the general flavour of which can already be found inside the new Nissan Rogue, also known as the X-Trail. Gone is the organic blobbiness of the 370Z, instead replaced by stronger, almost BMW-ish horizontal slabs. A massive 12.3-inch infotainment screen occupies almost the entire centre stack, but the trio of auxiliary instruments, long a Z hallmark, thankfully remain at the top of the dashboard. The steering wheel looks sporty too, with a thick rim and small horn pad, along with plenty of spoke-mounted buttons to help keep your hands on the wheel. It's a big improvement over the 370Z, though those interior door handles look awfully familiar. Like I said before, it all looks pretty production ready, something that's quite unusual for what's meant to be a design prototype. After all, here's what the Nissan GT-R Proto looked like, which was our first preview of what eventually became the R35 GT-R. On the outside, it looks pretty similar to what we eventually got in showrooms, but well, this is the interior. Yeah, that interior concept didn't age so well, did it? Anyway, back to the Z. Let's move on to the mechanical stuff. It was teased before, but now we know for sure. There's definitely going to be a manual transmission available in the Z35. In fact, the manual is all that Nissan is talking about right now when it comes to gearboxes, though I would absolutely expect a Nissan 7-speed auto to be available as an option, given the engine the Z will use is already engineered for that. And speaking of which, Nissan has also confirmed that the new Z will indeed use a V6 twin-turbo engine. They're not being specific, but it can only be one powertrain, the 3-litre VR30 that's already used by the Infiniti Q50, Q60 and Nissan Skyline. With 290 kilowatts or 400 horsepower, it's definitely got the muscle to make the new Z significantly faster than the 370Z and 350Z. It also has more power than the Toyota Supra, which is something to note if you might be cross-shopping the two. And those performance credentials are bolstered by the qualifications of this man, Hiroshi Tamura. He's in charge of making the new Z a proper sports car, and as a veteran of Nismo, a product lead on the R35 GTR, an R32 Skyline GTR owner, and even a rumoured member of the infamous Midnight Club, Tamura-san knows more than a few things about how to make a sports car feel right and go fast. Tamura is working with some old hardware though. After all, sports cars don't sell in massive numbers, so justifying new mechanical gear for just one model is difficult to greenlight. But the platform that will be used for the new Z is at least a good one. Known as the FM platform, it has been Nissan's go-to rear-wheel drive architecture since the start of this century, being used in the Skyline, large sedans like the President, the last two Zs, and even SUVs like the Infiniti FX. For a rear-drive sports car, it's ideal. Like I said, Hiroshi Tamura knows how to make a car handle, and this architecture should allow him to get the best out of the new Z. I would only hope, however, that they don't equip it with the steer-by-wire system of the Infiniti Q50, which also uses the same platform. That system felt far too artificial, and in my opinion, isn't suitable for a sports car. On the other hand, the 370Z's steering still feels pretty good, so I hope they simply just recycle that instead. Now, in my last video, I mentioned that the dominant theory behind the next Z's name had the number 400 in it. Give it a watch if you want the full explanation, but here I'm going to put forward a different theory. Nissan might just drop the number altogether, and instead of calling it 400Z, they might just simply call it the Z. It avoids the awkward question around whether to have the number reflect the displacement, or whether it should reflect the car's power, and besides, in Japan, almost every Z generation to date has been marketed as the Fairlady Z. In fact, you can clearly see a Fairlady Z badge on the tailgate of the Z Proto, applied at an angle just like it was in the 1969 240Z. What about price, you say? Well, I think it's a little bit too early to be talking about that given we've only just seen the car. However, I don't think it's going to be anywhere as expensive as the Toyota Supra is, and given that's its main competitor, well, I think that Nissan will probably have the price advantage once the car gets to the market. A lot of people are expecting the price to bump up relative to where the 370Z currently sits, and that's a reasonable assumption to make given you're getting a whole lot more equipment both inside the cabin and inside the engine bay. However, in my market of Australia, Infiniti sells the Q50 with that same twin-turbo engine in the $50,000 to $60,000 price bracket, and that's cheaper than the 370Z Nismo. So I think there's an outside chance that the new Z might actually come in with a similar price to what the 370Z currently has, which should hopefully make sure that it's still profitable for Nissan, but also relatively affordable for all the enthusiasts that really want this car. As for when it will go on sale, we don't have a concrete answer just yet. The events of 2020 have obviously thrown the plans of many into disarray, and the Z project isn't going to be immune to any of that. Even so, some are expecting it to go on sale in Japan perhaps in the latter half of next year, though we could be waiting until 2022 for it to enter production. But regardless, Nissan wants us to know that the new Z is coming. Makoto Uchida, the CEO of Nissan and a former Z owner himself, made the point that the Z Proto is not simply a concept, and that the look and mechanical fit out is very close to final. Everything we've seen from the Z Proto's reveal leads me to believe that Nissan is dead serious about getting this car to market, and it's simply a matter of time now. A great showdown between the Supra and the Z is shaping up, and it's exciting to see Japan rediscover its sports car mojo. The Supra may have beaten the new Z to market, but the Z has power and proper Japanese heritage on its side. It's not a car that will solve Nissan's money troubles, but I sure am glad that it exists. Anyway, that about does it for my coverage of the Nissan Z Proto's reveal. I hope you enjoyed it, I hope you were informed by it, I hope you leave a like if you were, leave a comment if you want to chat more about Nissan's new Z car direction. Thanks for watching everyone, I'll see you next time.